Hi, and welcome to today's COVID Faith upload. My name's Gary Gotham. I'm a United Reformed Church minister serving in the southwest of England, and I was told today by one of my family members that churches can now open even more than they were from the 4th of July. That the Prime Minister has told us that churches can be open for acts of worship, for weddings, albeit with no singing. So suddenly I am reeling and reflecting on what the implications for this might mean. So I thought I'd share some of my initial reactions to this. Or to be more accurate, I'm going to share with you this report that has come out of a national Zoom conference that I attended a week or so ago. It's called Life After Lockdown, and so I suppose the reflections, the summary from that report will feed into our thinking about the continuing unlocking of our nation's life, including its implications for our worshipping life as churches up and down the country and indeed around the world. So I'm going to begin simply by sharing with you the summary of the report. I'm going to link down below in the description the entire text of the report, but as I've printed it out, it's 12 pages long. So I'm going to share with you the summary, and as I go along I'm going to insert some of my own thoughts and reflections, and then I'll dig into some of the parts of the body of the text of the report and what I've made of it. So hopefully it won't be too dry, hopefully it'll be engaging, and hopefully you'll be able to respond to me and to the report in the comment section down below. So without further ado, here we go. Summary. Pastoral care, so care of one another within our churches, has been strong throughout lockdown. There's plenty of evidence that care is being backed up with a strong communal prayer life. This increase in engagement with one another not only sustains the life of the congregation, the church has suddenly been accessible to and sometimes safer for people who previously were excluded from any physical expression of church. Deeper prayer, strong community, and more careful listening to one another and many people's experiences of life in lockdown. And that's certainly been my experience here in the southwest of England. I've noticed more people are being cared for. There's been more phone calls, more emails, more letters have been sent, and people have been feeling more connected as a result. Goes on to say, some would go as far as to say that lockdown has helped the church to focus on the marginalised. Some report forming new community links during lockdown. There's a generosity of spirit alive in the community and a graciousness in sharing and mutual support that the church is glad to be part of. Some report that moving online has opened new opportunities for faith conversations. And again, that has been the case in my locality. The churches together initiated a COVID support network. We have, I think I've mentioned it in some of my previous videos, we have a phone hotline, and you can ring in, and a team of volunteers, over 300 volunteers, are able to take orders for food or for prescriptions and go and collect them from supermarkets and pharmacies and what have you, and deliver them to people's households. All these people have been vetted, references have been taken up, all the appropriate safeguarding things are in place, but that has fielded, I think, in the region now of 5,000 calls, and not just for food and for medicines, but also books and jigsaws have been delivered to people, and there's even a dedicated team of people waiting to just simply phone people if they ask for it, for conversation, for company in that form. And so it's been great to see the church being not only a part of that, but at the forefront of it. So we feel more connected, and more diversely so than we did in the past. The church, like many organisations, has had to learn very fast how to move its activities online, and certainly well, it looks like some traffic is returning. Certainly the environmental benefits, and there's an example of it not being an environmental benefit. But the environmental benefits of doing less travel are widely recognised and celebrated. And I joked just the other day that I'm now doing about 3 weeks to the gallon. How to increase digital literacy among those who are starting from zero remains a challenge for now and for the future. And that has been a challenge, but we are responding to it. The number of people now that are on Zoom that weren't before, that are on Skype, that are taking part via Facebook, telephone conferencing, all sorts of ways we've found of getting people connected. Most people acknowledge the rich and diverse offer of online worship now available. This has included people who previously found physical church exclusive. In many places, online worship is shared between congregations, within and between denominations. Most will see an ongoing place for online worship in the future. And absolutely that's been the case for those people for whom getting ready for the day is a long and drawn out process. To be able to access an act of worship in the afternoon or in the evening, where before they were forced to choose between 10:30 or not at all. So church is suddenly accessible to a whole raft of new people. Among many of our ministers and elders, there seems to be a desire to think about how things could be different. There's talk of pressing the reset button for the church. We've learned quite quickly how we can institute change when the pressure is on. One of the ways in which many people want to hit the reset button is to use the opportunity to think afresh about how we use our buildings and to be more intentional about using them for mission. Many do not want to get stuck inside four walls again, and you can count me as one of those. This time in lockdown has made us more intentional and focused about what it means to be church. Some are concerned that whilst we may have moved our worship online effectively and implemented good pastoral care systems, other essential work such as discipleship development, there's a jargon word, and evangelism have been less effectively transferred online. I might question that. I think the best form of sharing our faith is through personal conversations, and I know there have been plenty of those going on. There are voices, however, expressing anxiety and resistance to this agenda for change, voices who long to return to the normal. There's also a widespread recognition of the great anxiety in society at large. Experiences of exclusion and loneliness may well have been exaggerated by lockdown. There is work to do to find out how our communities have changed. The general sense is that there should be no hurry to return to things as they were, and that we need time to reflect. We should not rush into things. As we listen to those with whom we consult, we need to listen not just to views and solutions, we need to hear the emotions, some of which will be of trauma, loss, and grief. So the challenge remains unchanged, even though the world has. The challenge is to be salt and light to a hurting world. There does seem to be an honest recognition that there's no going back. Change has already happened, and we have been forcibly shaken out of our comfort zones. That so many people wanted to be a part of this conference, and I have to say there was over 100, maybe 150 people taking part, is ample testimony to this recognition. And even where we are uncertain as to how to go forward, the desire to do so is there, along with an abiding faith in God. And I will just add a rider to that. The people that took part in the conference were, by their very definition, people who were confident online, people who were also in a position of leadership. So we have to bear it in mind that they are viewing this through a particular lens, and theirs are the views that are reflected. So as we dig into the body of the text, what are the things that strike me? Well, the first one, and I'm going to add it at the end in the description, is a set of 4 questions. What have we lost that we need to regain? What have we gained that we need to keep or develop? What have we lost but do not need to regain? and what have we gained but we do not need to keep beyond lockdown? So my first instinctive responses to these are, I'm not sure what it is that we've lost that we need to regain, other than the social joy of meeting together. Many of the other aspects I sit quite lightly to, but I do miss seeing people in person. What have we gained that we need to keep or develop? For me, I think it's been an openness to people beyond the life of the church, that outward focus that we've suddenly been liberated, if I can put it that way, liberated into, because we've been freed of our busyness. And that brings me to my answer to the third question. What have we lost that we do not need to regain? And that, certainly for me, has been a busyness about maintaining a lot of plant and machinery and the internal machinations of church life. Valuable though they are also extremely time consuming. And finally, what have we gained but do not need to keep beyond lockdown? I think I have sensed, and I've sensed it within myself as well, a very low level tiredness and frustration, almost anger, and that boils over in the way that people have responded to all sorts of things. It's boiled over into responses about our nation's leadership. It's boiled over into our responses about certain national issues. It's boiled over into an even greater polarising of people's opinions around so many different matters. And I would welcome losing that. What else have I found in the report? There's a whole question about governance. I was talking about being freed, liberated from some of the machinations of church life, and this has come as a reminder to me, I think, that one person's red tape is another person's good practice. And I don't think they mean in safeguarding, I think they mean in a broader sense of that doing things properly, being accountable and being inclusive has been lost in some ways. What else have we got? There was a whole issue about digital literacy, and I've spent several hours, many hours, helping people, and I've enjoyed it, helping people to become more digitally literate, to access things, to get their head round how Zoom works, and I've been on a learning journey with that, to find out how their tablet or phone or computer works so that they can have a broader experience and be more included. So I'm looking for, when we do return to our buildings, to have a regular bring your own device to church. Whatever it is that's frustrating you, bring it and let's have a look at it, and let's see if we can't sort it out for you and make your experience one that's easier. So bring your own device to church. Another thing has been that a number of congregations have shared in worship. They've downloaded YouTube videos, or they've joined in Zoom services. So there's been almost an economy of scale, if you like, where one worship leader is now being able to work with a number of churches, and that's been good when we've been short of people to lead worship. But there's also been a side to that where we have potentially lost some of that more human face of meeting together. So there's a balance to be struck. But in this day when often we are short of people to lead worship, this has been a benefit. There's a note that physically meeting together has enabled people to be physical together, to share a hug with somebody that they know, to shake a hand, to be with somebody alongside them, properly alongside them in their times of loss and anguish. And we have lost that. So how might we do that in an appropriate way in the future? The church in community. There's been this sense of reflecting on the need to refocus our activity. One group made the distinction between activities that are social and those that have a social purpose. And it's the latter group they suggest that we need to make a priority. So yes, it's nice to meet together with our friends and catch up, but it's having a social purpose where our priority needs to be. Something that I've never heard of before, but that has piqued my interest, is the concept of death cafes. It sounds morbid, but it isn't. Google it. Go and do some research of your own and discover what they're about. I certainly would like to see if that might be an initiative that I can be involved in the future. So, some general principles. We must be careful, the report says, in our enthusiasms to make a positive contribution to life after lockdown, not to offer what we cannot deliver. Much better to do a few things well. And I think that's really important, otherwise we're going to fall into the trap of either letting people down or filling ourselves with busyness again. Some use the language of trauma to describe the experience of lockdown. If we recognise that description, we need a very particular kind of response to it. This will be most effective if we work in partnership with others, other churches and other organisations. And if lockdown's taught me one thing, it's that the best model to go forward with is that of partnership, that no one agency or charity or church has all the resources or all the answers. So we need to build on those partnerships. A phrase that I've loved and I'm still wrestling with the implications of is that lockdown is not Sabbath, rest, but Jubilee, to reset. It's not Sabbath to rest, but Jubilee, to reset. Have a look in the Old Testament for the notion of Jubilee. It was a resetting, it was a waiving of debts, it was allowing the land to rejuvenate itself. It was a releasing, and I think there's this sense that the church needs to reset, to let go, to put down, and then to start again. That so many wanted to be a part of this conference is ample testimony, and even where we're uncertain about how to move forward, the desire to do so is there, along with an abiding faith in God. And that was something that really came through, that despite all the uncertainty that we were faced with, there was that deep desire to trust in God and to move forward with God. So some more questions. Community is not just local community anymore. There are many different kinds of community. This COVID Faith channel that I've produced has become a community. People have engaged both with myself and the material that I've presented, but also with each other in conversations and the sharing of reflections and thoughts. There could be opportunities to offer online worship and pastoral support to different groups of people with particular needs or interests. This would challenge our usual way of doing things, where one size fits all. You all come to Sunday morning worship, you get one act of worship, and that's your lot. What would this mean for our congregation's view of church? In the past, we've recognised how important sharing food is in building up community. If this remains difficult or impossible in the aftermath of lockdown, what alternatives are there? That one's dear to my heart. To what extent have the opportunities of lockdown been down to people having more time and being a captive audience? Will we lose all of this when people's lives and diaries become full once again? Will people be less prepared to fit their lives around the demands of church life? There's two sides there. I've certainly noticed a change in the number of people viewing these videos since lockdown began to be eased. But I've also noticed people saying quite adamantly, I'm not going back to how it was. I'm not being that busy again. So some practical ideas. What about a local heroes event to celebrate what's happened in your community? What about collecting together old devices and offering them to those not yet online with suitable technical support? Sometimes that becomes more effort than it's worth, but it's worth considering. Why not think about how you can decorate the outside of your church building and grounds to make it look open? Flowers, banners, messages, lights, make it playful, involve the community. Embrace the change in society by becoming an eco-church. Install a happy to chat bench in your community. So there's all sorts of ideas already coming through. And the United Reformed Church has produced two booklets to help us to think that through even further. One's called Ready for the New Normal, and the other one, New Reality, Same Mission. And I'll add those to the resources down in the description. So there's so much coming through just from that one gathering, and there is also a recognition of the fear and anxiety of some too. So a lot there to think about. I'm not ready to see the church unlocked for private prayer or for worship yet, and sharing with my local leadership teams, they are of the same opinion. I think we have a long way to go yet before we are COVID safe, if I can put it that way. Most of us do not have an immunity to it. The virus has not changed. Society and the NHS's capacity to deal with it may have increased, but I certainly wouldn't want any of my physical church buildings to become places that are local hotspots. So we have a lot more thinking and working to do yet before we open up, but we also have a lot of thinking and working to do about what we can be doing in the meantime, about what we can be offering to not only our own people but also to the public at large via the online communities that we're forming. So to close, this has been a bit of a ramble, but I hope there's been some meat in there, some things that have given you pause for thought and reflection, and that you can get stuck into and reflect on in the comments section. But the four formal questions, if you like, to ask you to respond to, you can respond to any of the other bits, but respond to these as well, please. What have we lost that we need to regain? What have we gained and need to keep or develop? What have we lost and do not need to regain? I think that's really key. And what have we gained but do not need to keep beyond lockdown? I'm really looking forward to seeing what you put in the comments section after this. This is just a personal plea. I'm one subscriber away from hitting a little personal milestone. So please, if you can subscribe, do so. Hit the red subscribe button down below and make it grey, and then hit the bell icon. But please, much more importantly than that, respond to any of the content I've shared with you, but particularly those 4 questions that are down in the video description below. As always, folks, stay safe and live love.